Hi everyone, I'm Brian Hetrick, the Spirulina Guru, and today I'd like to show you how to make my raw vegan blueberry cheesecake. Now there are 4 steps to this recipe. The first step is to make the crust. The second step is the filling. The third step is the chocolate glaze that goes on top. And the fourth step is the garnish. So we'll start with making the crust. Now for making the crust, we're going to be using the food processor with the S blade, and we're going to add 2 cups of raw pecans. So for this recipe, you could use other types of nuts. You could use walnuts. You could possibly use some Brazil nuts or a mixture of them. I like to use the pecans for the crust. And next we're going to add 10 medjool dates. Medjool dates are particularly large and they're particularly juicy. I like to get them when I buy them from the store with the pit rather than pitted, which means the pit has been removed. And so I can remove the pits myself. I believe they're fresher that way. And also this allows me to keep count of the number of dates that I've put into my food processor. So all I have to do is keep the pits in one place and then I can count them up. These are going to go into the compost. And the next ingredient is going to be 2 tablespoons of shredded coconut. This is organic from Sprouts Farmers Market. And next we're going to make some noise. So we run the food processor for about a minute until the date and pecan and coconut is well incorporated together into a nice meal. And then we're going to take our pecan, date, coconut meal and spread it into a 9-inch glass pie pan. So the dates actually have a compound in them that is actually anti-aging. And of course the pecans are a good source of protein, a good source of omega essential fatty acids. So after processing, the pecans sort of form a bread-like sort of consistency, and the dates act as the binder. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread out my pecan date meal, evenly throughout the pan, and I'm going to press it down. And I press it down evenly to form this uniform pie crust. The next step is we're going to make the filling that goes into the pie crust. And for making the filling, we're going to be using the Vitamix blender. And the first ingredient is going to be 1 pound of raw cashews. So these are not salted, these are not candied, and they're not roasted. So 1 cup dry nuts is going to be about equivalent to about 4 ounces. So we're going to need 4 cups of these raw cashews into the food processor. And the next ingredient that we're going to need is a half a cup of water. So I like to use good filtered water here. And then we're going to add 1/2 a cup of raw agave. And then 3/4 of a cup of raw coconut oil. This is unrefined, organic. Now, coconut oil is solid below 77 degrees Fahrenheit, and it becomes a liquid above 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So you may need to place this outside if it's summertime for a couple of hours to let it liquefy if you keep your house cooler than 77 degrees. Or on the stove in a pan of water on very, very low heat for a few minutes. And then we're going to need a 1/2 a cup of organic blueberries into the Vitamix. This is what makes it the blueberry cheesecake. And 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. And 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. This is organic. So in the Vitamix blender, we have 1 pound or 4 cups of raw cashews. We have a 1/2 a cup of water, a 1/2 a cup of agave, 3/4 of a cup of coconut oil, and we have a 1/2 a cup of blueberries and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And we're going to blend for about a minute. Now, during this 60 seconds of blending, your blender may cavitate, which means you need to stop it and burp the contents inside, which is just kind of shaking it like this, or you can take the top off and add a spoon, stir it around a little bit to get the air from around the blades, and then just start it up again. Now for this recipe, anytime you're dealing with nuts in the blender, you're essentially making nut butters. So you will need a high power blender like a Vitamix or a Blendtec. If you're just using a conventional blender, then you're probably going to burn up the motor before too much time when you're making nut butters. So we're going to simply add our filling into the pie pan here on top of our crust. And once I've added all of my filling into the pie pan on top of the pie crust, I'm going to smooth it out a little bit just using my narrow spatula here to make it somewhat level. It doesn't have to be perfectly level. It can sort of have a little bit of a crown to it. And the next step will be to add the chocolate glaze on top of the filling, and then finally to add the garnish. But before we do that, I'm going to put this into the freezer for 2 or 3 hours to let the filling set. And then I'll take it out of the freezer and do the last two steps. So stand by and we'll be right back. Hi everyone, I'm back and I've let my blueberry cheesecake set in the freezer for about 3 hours. And now it's time for the next step. The next step is to prepare the chocolate glaze, which will go on top of the blueberry cheesecake. For the chocolate glaze, I'm just going to be hand mixing in a medium-sized bowl like this. So the first ingredient is going to be a half a cup of raw cacao powder into the bowl. And then we're going to add a half a cup of the virgin coconut oil, organic. Also into the mixing bowl. And then 1/4 cup of organic raw agave. And that's it. So it's only 3 ingredients. And we're making basically like a dark chocolate. So I'm just going to stir this gently by hand, and I'm breaking up any clumps. And I'm going to fully integrate the 3 ingredients. The next step is I'm going to pour my chocolate glaze on top of my blueberry cheesecake. And this chocolate glaze will set fairly quickly. And while I'm waiting for it to set, I'm going to prepare the last step. The last step is the garnish. And the garnish is going to be simply strawberries and blueberries. So for my strawberries, I'm going to cull the strawberries, which is just a fancy word for removing the leafy green part of the strawberries. And as I'm culling the strawberries, I'm looking them over and I'm going to choose one to be the centerpiece of my blueberry cheesecake. So I want to choose one that is not too small and not too big, and that will go right in the middle of my blueberry cheesecake. So this one looks pretty good. And then I'm going to slice the remaining strawberries to go around the perimeter of the blueberry cheesecake. So I'm going to set aside the ends, and I'm going to make slices that are about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch thick. And I'm going to use those for the perimeter decoration. I set aside the ends to use in other recipes or simply to eat later as a snack. And strawberries, like blueberries, are very high in antioxidants. All the berries are. So I always make sure to choose organic when I'm purchasing all of my produce and all of my ingredients as much as possible, but especially the berries. Those foods where we eat the skin, it's particularly important to choose organic. And now I'm ready to go around the perimeter of the blueberry cheesecake with these strawberry slices. So I'm going to arrange them with the wide part facing out and the narrow part facing in. So to do one blueberry cheesecake, you'll need about 1 cup of these sliced strawberries. That's about 8 strawberries of medium size. And then I'm going to finish the garnish with some organic blueberries. And I just kind of drizzle the organic blueberries in the middle, surrounding the perimeter ring of the sliced strawberries, and also around the centerpiece strawberry. So for the blueberry garnish, you'll also need about 1 cup of these fresh organic blueberries. I like to take my time here and be creative and let your artistic flair shine in this step. We eat with our eyes first, so when it looks good, then we know it's going to taste good. And there we have it. We have this beautiful, organic, raw vegan blueberry cheesecake. And this pie is fairly dense, it's fairly heavy, so it will serve about 12 people. Now this recipe is in my book, Natural Vibrant Health, Raw Foods. This is a collection of over 60 of my favorite recipes. And this book, Natural Vibrant Health, Raw Foods, can be found at spirulinaguru.com. That's spirulinaguru.com. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you next time.